Hey, and welcome to Movement Parallels Life. This is a 20-minute natural movement practice. This is a more free-flowing practice. I just wanted to get outside, enjoy the beautiful day, get out and move around in free space. So we'll be going through these diverse natural movement patterns. Do your best to keep up, make any adjustments that are going to suit you along the way. So we're starting with these kneeling rotational reaches, making sure to elongate my body as I twist and reach, extend the arm, exhaling through the reach, inhaling through the transition. I'll make a point to hold some of these positions for 3 to 5 breaths, just as a way to really go inside and find these small changes in activation, in position and alignment that can help me refine the movements. Moving context free like this is an opportunity to go inside the body and really start to experiment with what's going to work best for your body. Next pattern, going into a tall kneeling position and just sweeping my arms overhead, coordinating this movement with my breathing. Inhale my arms up, exhale my arms down. Paying attention to the alignment of my body, doing my best to keep my ribs from flaring open and keeping my pelvis level. Just making these movements light and relaxed here. Essentially, I'm just easing into this practice. From the overhead reach, going into a back reach. Arms overhead, I twist and extend one arm back, reach the other arm across my body. As I rotate, I'm paying special attention to my spine, making sure that I'm not overextending or creating too much compressive stress in my lower back, but I'm trying to rotate around my central axis. Next movement pattern, we're going to a kneeling step out. From that kneeling position, just shifting my weight so I'm able to step one leg forward and then sink into this half kneeling lunge position. Start to add these reaches. And you'll see I'm just going to make my way in a circle as I do this. Even when I'm moving without a lot of environmental complexity, when the context isn't there, I'm still trying to create opportunities to move in all planes, take advantage of 360 degrees of movement. Notice I'm stepping out at different angles. Sometimes I'm stepping wide, sometimes I'm stepping narrow. I might even step across my body. Finding strength and stability in each variation of this position is where you're going to learn more about your body, where you're going to learn about your restrictions, where you're going to learn about your strengths. Next pattern, going through a push-up into a crawl lunge. Just trying to make this transition smooth. I'll glide my leg back, lower myself down into a push-up, and start to hike the leg up as I press, and I step the leg next to my hands. Really nice way to find some length in the hip flexors, add some strength to the legs, but also get some pushing strength as well. From a practical standpoint, I'm going into this low crawling position, maybe to get underneath an obstacle, but then pushing back up to my high position so I can crawl more efficiently. Next variation here, going to a close half kneeling hold. So instead of stepping my leg out far in front of me, I'm just going to step out very close to the body And primarily using this position as a way to stretch my feet. I've got this flexed foot kneeling position. Now we transition into kneeling get-ups. We'll see this again later on in the session. This is just a go-to get-up variation of mine. Constantly working on slowly lowering myself to the ground with control, and then rising back up to my knee bend, to my squat, and to standing. Now I'm starting to increase the complexity by standing up and stepping or changing my orientation in some way. Practical thinking here, if I need to get up, I'm probably going to need to move or change my position in some way. So I just add that, and this starts to get me to think about how to be more adaptive with my movements, how to be more spontaneous and creative. I get up and then I'm going to do something, create some kind of stepping pattern, and then transition back to the ground. The get up leads me to movement. The movement leads me back to my pattern of getting down to the ground. Next, playing around with some knee walking from a tall kneeling position, just effectively shifting the weight, stepping forward with the knees. Maybe playing around with some changes of orientation, reversing direction. So next I've got this split kneel reversal, which is, I'll kind of call a windshield wiper action. As I come up to that split kneel, I shift some weight forward. I rotate my hips so I can pivot and swing my legs around, creating a reversal. And then now from a seated position, side sit, keep my feet in contact with the ground, and swivel the knees side to side. This is a classic pattern. I use this in my groundwork almost always, but now starting to bring those two patterns together, the swivel reversed and the split kneel reverse. This just gives me more adaptability, more options to be able to sit and stand and move around in my environment. Rise up to my split kneel, sit, swivel the knees, rise up to my split kneel, and reverse at the top of the split kneel. You can just play around with combining these, have fun. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the more you play around with these patterns, the more consistent you are with your practice, the more this will start to make sense. Next, from my split kneel position, I sit down to my side sit, roll across my hips, and then back up to kneeling or split kneeling. It's just a little lateral roll action. You can definitely use your hands to assist you with this pattern until it starts to make more sense, so you start gaining more control and stability. It's definitely not cheating if you use your hands to support yourself, but give yourself the right spot. Train these movements in an environment that's comfortable and allows you to learn, allows you to teach your body how to connect to these movements and become more fluid. Placing my hands down next into a crawl position, and then walking my hands back towards my feet, lifting my hips, and I come into this deep hinge. So if I were to bend forward, place my hands on the ground, and then walk out to a crawl, this is just another very fundamental transition, but a good way to develop core strength, shoulder stability, and hip mobility as well. As I go through this, I'm coming out to my crawl and I'm changing my orientation as well. So it's not enough to just go through the pattern. I'm looking for ways to bring this pattern into more integrated movement. I'm already thinking about, what is this pattern good for? How is it going to help me move in space? And this is just going one step further. Not just thinking of these movement patterns as exercise, but this is natural movement. And natural movement in the sense of movements that allow us to navigate the world, to get around effectively and efficiently. Simple stuff here, but practice, 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 and refining and finding those little details. So now we're getting into a foot hand crawl, getting a little bit more conditioning work in, moving forward and moving backwards. I keep my hips and head at around the same level. You can see my hips are creeping up a little bit. When we're talking about perfect form, we emphasize keeping the spine long and the back flat, but it's all right if the hips come up a little bit. Moving into a tripod next, and using the tripod to simply sit to the ground. I go from my crawling position, use my tripod to have a seat, and just going back and forth as I make this transition, making sure to maintain core strength and shoulder stability. I'll move into another foot hand crawl variation, the lateral crawl next. Just always working in all planes of motion. We did forward reverse, but now adding this lateral movement adds a different sensation, especially in the sense of shoulder stability. One of my favorite movements next, the crawl rolling transition. Smoothly going from a prone position to a supine crawl position. From face down to face up, I reach with my leg. From face up to face down, I'm reaching across my body with my arms. Trying to make this very smooth, very controlled. We'll stay with this pattern for a little bit. Try to make it more complex. We'll add some intensity as well and make this more dynamic. I'll start to use my arm to create some momentum to swing me around. And I might even be able to do more of a jumping transition here. You can see the windmill action of my arms that gives me the momentum to turn over dynamically. Definitely make sure that you feel comfortable with the prone crawl position and the supine crawl position. Make sure that you feel comfortable supporting yourself on one arm before you jump right into that advanced expression. And then I take a moment to rest, relax, roll my shoulders. Another few kneeling get-ups. Keeping my control and keeping track of my posture along the way. I think these are so great for conditioning the knees. Going into a squat walk next, so not very deep right now. I started doing some ground touches as well. I'm doing my best to keep a long spine, maintaining the structural integrity of my torso, and just sinking down a little bit lower, making sure that I can touch the ground, and I'm almost creating a little bit of a rhythm as I walk and as I reach. If I'm doing this movement and there's any objects on the ground, rocks or things of that nature, I'll start to try to pick them up. Can I keep moving, and do I have the precision to pick up objects as well? Start to speed up a little bit, advancing and retreating while staying in a quarter squat position, keeping some tension on my legs. Keeping the arms relaxed. Now changing patterns into the split kneel walk, another version of knee walking. Gliding forward, letting my knee touch the ground softly, and gliding through, stepping the back leg through. This pattern is used when we're working on our combatives or our grappling practice, or if we're crawling and need to get underneath an obstacle. Taking our squat walk into the frontal plane now with a crossover walk. Same thing, I'm trying to stay low enough to the point where I can touch the ground, Keep some tension in my legs. And now I'm crossing my midline. So I'm asking my hips to be challenged a different way, a different plane of motion. Basic step overs next. Balance and coordination as we manage the weight shifting. My standing leg is driving into the ground, creating my support, and my stepping leg, I'm trying to express strength through a full range of motion at the hips. Now adding some duck unders. Using my imagination here, thinking of passing under an imaginary obstacle, and I'm adding some footwork. So I'm trying to stay light on my feet. Imagine I'm ducking under a moving obstacle. I'm trying to be a little bit more adaptive with my practice, not just going through the paces, but giving these movements meaning. And even when I don't have anything to move around, I can still use my imagination to make the movements more meaningful. And when I practice in this way, I find that I get so much more out of what I'm doing than if I'm just disconnected, if I'm mindless. It's this piece of really being present in what you're doing and how to make the movements real and figure out how they could be practically applied in real situations. Moving sideways, moving forward and back, but also making sure to rotate. That's really the key piece to athleticism. Now playing around with some lunge transitions. This is similar to the split kneeling walk from earlier. I'm trying to balance in that lunge position or that deep knee bend, but I'm also backing out of it, coming to my half kneeling and crescent lunge positions. Just playing around here. Can I be strong and stable in these more demanding bases of support, these more demanding positions? Along the way, I'm getting a great mobility effect for my hips. I'm gaining a lot of strength and structural integrity for my ankles, knees, and hips as well. Continue to explore here. The more you explore, the more you become aware of the possibilities, and you really step beyond the confines of exercise and start making your movements meaningful. They actually have a purpose and they actually serve you, and you figure out what movement means within the context of your unique life. So just keep playing around here. As the heat builds, the legs start to burn a little bit, change position, but try to do so mindfully. We're going to change to squat transitions next. So I'm falling into my deep squat, or rather controlling myself as I lower down into my deep squat. Hang out there for a few seconds. And then I'm standing. And as I stand, I'm going to step, I'm going to change position. I'm just going to go somewhere else. I'm going to do something. So my squat is my resting position. I return to standing and I'm ready to move. And then I transition back to my resting position. It's not just the ability to own the deep squat, but how can you use it in a more adaptive way? So I'm getting my reps in, but rather than just up and down and up and down and up and down, I'm going to add some variability in the mix. I'm going to start to explore. I'm going to start to adapt. Then lowering myself to the ground, find a long sit position. I'm just going to play around with some reaches and some walks. Again, holding these positions to create the strength. It's not a passive stretch, but the stretch is created through my active intention. In this case, of reaching up overhead. My legs are reaching out away from my body. My arms are reaching up towards the sky, and I'm thinking length. Even though these are simple movements, pay attention, be mindful on how you can create control and stability from the center of the body all the way out to the limbs. Now that's going to finish our practice for today. You could see it was a very fluid practice, not necessarily a formal warm-up or cool down. It wasn't high intensity, but there was a lot of diverse movement, a lot of patterns, and an opportunity to explore movement in real-world terms. Get outside the box and move in all planes. So this to me is really the foundation of a natural movement practice, and I'm really happy to share it with you. So thanks for taking some time to watch today, and we'll see you next time.